It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into an episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. This three-screen thing, these three co-host thing has been so great. We just want to keep doing it. Derrick Bell back on the show. How we doing, pal?
Doing good, man. Yeah, we're less than a week and a half away from the draft. So, yeah, it's closing time, man. There's a lot to talk about.
Alan and I were talking right before Derrick joined, and I said, first thing I wanted to open up with was just, I'm ready for the draft to be here. I'm all out of takes. I'm taked out. I just want draft night to get here so we can figure out who the player is going to be that Derrick is going to be pumping out content about and who we're going to be pumping out content about over at SteelersNow.com. Can't wait to see it. Finally, Alan, how we doing?
I feel like we're in this weird lull, right? Where all the, you got the Senior Bowl, and then you got the Combine, and then you got pro days, and you got 30 visits, and all that time, like free agency is happening, and trades are happening, and coaching changes are happening, and the NFL is moving very rapidly from the end of the season until like last week, and then these last 10 days to 2 weeks right before the draft, we kind of just hit this dead zone, right? Where, the moves that are going to happen before the draft are going to happen probably either right before the draft or during. I don't think we're going to see a lot more movement here in the next week or so, and then we're all just kind of waiting and looking and it's like a Mexican standoff from a movie now, right? Everybody kind of knows what they want to do. So there's no more point in leaking stuff or it's like, I know what I know, you know what you knew. Now we're just going to sit here and stare at everybody until the moves start to go down. And so, yeah, I feel like this is this week drags on every year, and we get the last 2 days of top 30 visits coming tomorrow on Wednesday. Had two interesting ones today we want to get to right away, and that is a pair of offensive linemen, Troy Fautanu from Washington and Mason McCormick from South Dakota State. I think we'll start with Fautanu, who's a first-round pick, and I mean, I think a guy probably won't make it to 20, but would be very interesting for the Steelers if he did.
What's interesting to me about him, Alan, I remember this was very early in the process, like an early mock draft that Daniel Jeremiah put out. He mocked him to the Steelers. And this is before we got measurements or anything like that. And maybe he still ends up being a better guard than tackle in the NFL. And there might be teams that see him that way. We'll see if he makes that transition at some point. But the arm length concerns were kind of put to rest with the way that he measured. A lot of teams feel like he's going to be able to stick to tackle. But I just remember on here having that discussion, if he is a guard, this makes no sense. So he better be a tackle.
Yeah, I really, really like this player. I've been talking about him quite a bit recently, and like Alan said, I'm not really quite sure if he gets to 20. I think he's 19th right now on the consensus board. How teams view him positional-wise is definitely going to vary from team to team. He does, like Smitty mentioned, the 34.5-inch arms definitely fit the threshold. Normally, anything under 33.5 is usually a no-go for most teams, but 34.5 is sufficient. He is shorter, so I feel like that's another reason why a lot of people have been projecting him inside. He's just not he's really short for a tackle. But he's a fantastic player. He is an awesome athlete. He excels out on screens. I mean, the way he targets guys and hits guys on screens is really pretty awesome, to be honest with you. Really explosive out of his stance, smooth mover overall. But the thing that I'm really intrigued about with him is his hands are so good. They are so fast. He's so efficient with them. He doesn't pack a ton of pop, but just the way he positions his hands, the aiming points are always on point. And I just feel like that was one of the things I brought up a week or two ago. I just feel with how fast his hands are, he might be a guy that could play center. I don't know if the Steelers are looking at him as a tackle or, a guard, a center, but there's been people that have kind of thrown that theory out there that he could play all five positions. And I really do believe that he could. The only thing with him is he doesn't have exceptional play strength. So that is kind of one of the things too, is if you do put him inside, is he going to be able to kind of anchor down against some of the bigger, more powerful rushers? But he's a pretty awesome player, and somebody that if he was there at 20, I would definitely be cool with that being the pick.
I think I would rule him out from being a left tackle probably, but I think he can play the other four. I think right tackle honestly feels like the place that will be the best fit for him in the NFL, just based on, especially if you're talking about playing him in year one, which I mean, I think obviously the Steelers with multiple needs on the offensive line would be looking to do. And really anybody that probably takes him, if we're talking about a guy taking the top 20 picks, I mean, most of those guys are going to play in year one at least a little bit, if not a lot. I kind of feel like right tackle will be a pretty nice, easy landing spot for him. Certainly could play guard, maybe could play center. I don't know. I think you usually want a taller guy as your left tackle, but man, he's a good player. I don't think he'll make it to the Steelers. I think I just started my first round mock and really, kind of just put guys into places that I'm kind of like gut instinct first look, and I'll refine that as I go. But I mean, I think I have him going a good bit higher than that. But he's definitely a player that if he is there at 20, or even if he, gets to, trade an easy trade up range, I think starts to become a real solution for the Steelers. I mean, I just wonder in terms of a trade up, like last year we saw them move up 3 picks for Broderick Jones, but with a very different board behind him at tackle. Like that was the last guy. I don't see Fautanu being the last guy at tackle in this class. So like would, with a bunch of needs, a trade up to get him even be worthwhile, even if they think he's a good bit better than, say, Mims or Latham.
Yeah.
There's a thing I was going to bring up, actually. I was just saying, if they're all 3 on the board still, when it gets to like 16, 17, they'll probably, in my opinion, I think they would just let it play out.
Yeah. The other thing with him is he has the ability to like mix up his sets, and his footwork can get a little choppy, a little frenetic. But like I said, his athleticism, man, it really, really pops on tape. I know he tested exceptionally well, but he's definitely a guy that I think, would be someone that they would have like a pretty high grade on. I just wonder, like you said, Alan, like I wonder like if they would consider moving up for him, like because he is the type of player that I think is worth a top 20 selection. It's just a matter of, are they comfortable with some of the other options that are on the board?
Yeah. The question that I thought of, and this is thinking down the line, right? We saw the guard market kind of explode this offseason in terms of the free agency, the way the guys were getting paid in the interior. And James Daniels' contract is up after the season. If they were to not extend him, is he a guy that they would maybe consider kicking inside? And then once again, for a third straight year, we're looking at tackle in the 2025 class.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like, there's some of these tackles that are the tweener types, and I guess you can put Fautanu kind of in that mold that everybody's going to say, we'll just try them at tackle. And I think generally speaking, I would probably do the same. And then, you see how their rookie season or how training camp goes at tackle, and then you can kind of transition them inside. Fautanu is definitely a guy that I would try at tackle first. And then if things go just really poorly as a rookie and you just look at him and say like, all right, this is just not working out, we want to push him inside, then it could be a scenario like you were talking about where, you either put him at guard, put him at center. I would be a fan of extending James Daniels. He would be my number one priority this offseason. I look at the guys that are potentially up for extensions. It's not even close for me who I think should be at the top of that list. I think that you're seeing a lot of these teams now start to kind of get into the mindset of like paying these interior pass blockers because of all these interior pass rushers that are getting paid. So it's kind of like a cause and effect type of thing. And Daniels has just been so solid, man, especially in pass pro, that you're talking about putting, like, if you think about the 2 biggest needs right now on the Steelers offensive line, it's probably ideally center and right tackle, right? Well, your right guard is James Daniels. He's already a solid player. It really helps to have a veteran in between 2 positions where you kind of have a lot of uncertainty at. So he would be a guy that I would just try to keep long term. But sure, it is like Fautanu would be a nice kind of, break glass in case of emergency kind of plan if you did have to go that route.
Yeah, I mean, the place that I have him going right now is, and I have seen it as a pretty popular pick also, is like Seattle, right, where they need help inside and at guard. And but look, I think he can go a number of different places in this draft, and I don't think it's crazy to talk about him getting close to the Steelers at 20. I really wonder if the Bengals would pass on him. But yeah, I think he can get pretty close.
Alan, the interesting thing with Seattle too is, Charles Cross, Abe Lucas, especially Abe Lucas, the injuries that they've suffered over the last couple seasons, a guy that could kick outside if he has to would be nice as well. That provides that.
Yeah. And obviously, his college offensive coordinator as well. So, you have that connection there too.
Sure. Yeah. Derrick, I want to ask you, because you just said center and right tackle, but I want to get your take on this, because Alan and I have talked about it quite a bit with Broderick Jones. Like, you saying that kind of makes me think that you would want to see Broderick Jones on the left side. Why is that I don't want to say that for most fans, because I really don't know, but it certainly seems that way, that they like that he has to play on the left side. A guy that is,
Mhm.
a better run blocker than a pass protector, you would think would make more sense on the right side than the left. So why does everybody talk about Broderick as being a natural left tackle?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I really don't care if he plays left or right. To me, I don't think there's a ton of difference in terms of value in today's NFL because so many of the different rushers are rushing from both sides. They flip from right to left. We've got a lot of the best pass rushers that rush over the right tackle. So to me, that doesn't really play a ton into it. I just look at like mainly listening to what he says. If he says he's more comfortable on the left side, I think that's probably where he needs to play. If you take that type of investment on a player who, in my opinion, just coming out last year in the draft, like was a little bit of a project, especially in pass pro. If you're going to make that type of investment, you need to make sure he's as comfortable as possible. Now, I will say, if they make the decision to keep him at right tackle this season, just leave him there. Like, don't move him back and forth. We've seen this so many times before. Like, and I say this kind of talking out of both sides of my mouth here because we just talked about moving guys around. But generally speaking, young players coming into the NFL, adjusting to a completely different level of competition, you don't want to be moving them around all over the place because it just doesn't allow them to get comfortable and it stunts their development. A guy like James Daniels is a really good example of that. Like in Chicago, he played left guard, right guard, center, and he was never able to get comfortable. And then he comes to Pittsburgh and he plays right guard for 2 straight seasons. And I think we can all agree that he's a good, maybe not elite or great, but he's a good player. And I just feel like that's what I don't want to happen with Broderick. Like just leave him in one spot, whether that's left or right tackle, be done with it. Like let him get used to the footwork, let him get used to the hand place and all that stuff on that particular side. And could that play into like who they want in this draft? Because there's a couple guys like that we could talk about that are have only ever played right side or only ever played left side. I don't know how that all plays into it. It'll be fascinating to watch it play out. But really, the Steelers would be the only one that could really answer that question. It sounds like they are open to having him move back to the left side, but it doesn't sound like a 100% definitive answer.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted your take on that, because it just seems like so many people in the fan base are like, this guy has to be the left tackle. And I didn't know if it was because of the 14th pick investment that, or what the reason was.
Now, one thing I will say, like, that I feel like people are missing, like that have talked to me about this on Twitter, people are missing why it is a little bit worrisome to put him back at left tackle because he is on the blind side of the quarterback. So some of those quick losses last year that he had, like he had a really rough, like 5 or 6 weeks down the stretch of the regular season. Rookie wall, guys get tape on him. Some of his really bad habits getting exposed. Like those quick losses are much more detrimental to the quarterback when you're on the blind side than when you're on the front side because of where the quarterback's eyes are. Really common sense type of thing. But if you're talking about moving him to left tackle, that is like something to take into account. So
yeah, absolutely. And the other player, like we mentioned real briefly, Mason McCormick, interesting player for the Steelers to bring in, just because are they viewing him as a center? Certainly have the need there. We've spent so much time talking about James Daniels, one of their guards, Isaac Seumalo, who they brought in last offseason. So not necessarily a spot immediately at one of those guard spots. So do they see him as a center? And what are your guys' thoughts on the player?
It's really interesting because they didn't bring in like any of the other like day 3 center guy. Like if you would think if they were thinking day 3 center, like then people like Tanner Bortolini, Hunter Norzad, Bo Limmer would have been coming to Pittsburgh, Dominic Puny, right? And so do they see Mason McCormick as a center and not some of those guys? I don't know. I mean, I think some of those guys are pretty clearly centers. It's a weird one-off, right? Do they think, are they want to get a look at him as a future guard, because James Daniels' contract is coming up and it could make sense to try to draft behind him this year if you're dealing with the possibility of losing him. But then where are the rest of the day 3 guards, right? Where are the Isaiah Adams and the Zach Zinters and even maybe earlier than that, a Christian Mahogany or, there's a lot of players that fit both of those categories that did not come to Pittsburgh for a visit. Doug Nestor, who would have been a free visit, wasn't reported as one of the 30 visits. So it's very strange that this is sort of the one guy out there that they've decided to come in and take a look at as a third-day guard.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned like the possibility of him moving to center. I mean, he's got 57 career starts. I mean, he's one of the most experienced offensive linemen really in the class, right? But all of those starts have been at left guard. So he's never even played on the other side, really, aside from a handful of snaps. He's going to be a 24-year-old rookie. Like, this guy's probably, based on what I've seen, is like there's a chance he could sneak into day 2, but probably early day 3 is realistic. The only exposure to him, like, he's on my list to watch like today or tomorrow as I finalize like my offensive lineman rankings. The only game I've really for real watched him was against Northern Iowa. I watched him up against Christian Boyd, another guy who's had a top 30 visit with the Steelers. I actually thought he won that matchup pretty convincingly. He's a pretty good player. I think his athletic testing surprised me a little bit. I don't know that he plays like that type of level of athlete, but he's a nice player. I felt like he was definitely somebody who like stood out. Like, whenever you're watching those small school, teams or whatever, especially an offensive lineman, you want those guys to stand out head and shoulders above the competition because of the guys they're playing up against. But yeah, I'm interested to get to his tape. I think a big thing for me is like when we're talking about day 3 of the draft, just trying to find depth, like guys that are experienced can come in and play like at least like backup spots. Like, I'm not sure, like when you're drafting in rounds 4, 5, 6, whatever, like you're not necessarily targeting, starters. You're more so targeting guys that you think can have developmental tools. And I think McCormick, just based on paper and what I've seen in limited action, definitely kind of fits that description.
996 RAS when you run it as a guard, 10 as a center. I think he's a good enough guard that like nobody's going to need to feel that like guys that move from guard to center are guys that you don't think can play guard, basically. Like, I think he can. I think he will stick at guard. Now, maybe the Steelers don't have the immediate need for him and would do something different, but I think he's a guard in the NFL. He reminds me a lot of like a more athletic version of BJ Finney. Kind of has a similar build to him. I just feel like it's like this. I don't know. He's not overly heavy. Like, it's only like 309. Is not like a big guy, but he's just got this like sort of natural thickness to his build that I like a lot. And I think he's an interesting guy for the Steelers. Like you said, just like, hey, this is a good offensive lineman. We'll find a place for him if you could get him on day 3. I just don't know that the need, like, it doesn't scratch that immediate itch in terms of like, hey, here are the guys that need to be replaced right this second and where you could find them. And I don't know if he makes it to their 6th round picks, which is where you would generally be looking at, oh, we just need to draft a guy to get a guy. But it's very interesting that he's the one, like, it very much does not fit the pattern of their other visits. So certainly my ears perked up when I heard his name.
Maybe he kind of falls into that same bucket. Like we've mentioned, I didn't plan to talk about James Daniels' contract situation on this episode this much, but maybe he's another guy like you have him for 1 year and kind of getting him ready to be the right guard. We're talking about him potentially because of the immediate need at center, but who's to say, what if they take a center early and also draft this guy late? He is still around.
Yeah, it's possible. Like, I just don't like the thing that's confusing is that there's no other day 3 linemen on visits.
Yeah, right.
And guys that I think are like Pooney and Zinter, who they didn't even get to see at the Senior Bowl, right? I mean, like McCormick, they talked to him at the Shrine Bowl, so this will be like their 2nd time around. And in fact, they did. I want to say they did a combine informal with him too. Maybe he's been pretty repeatedly connected to them. So I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting that, like, I think guard is a sort of under talked about need for the team going forward, just based on the age of the 2 guys and the contract situation of Daniels. Like, it's not crazy to use a late day 3 pick on a guard just to add depth to the group.
Yeah, you mentioned like just kind of the visit in general from a positional standpoint that made you kind of perk up a little bit. Like, that was kind of how it was when it was reported that Michael Penix was coming to visit. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, he was,
same thing,
because he's the only quarterback that they showed like any interest in at all throughout the process. So it was just like one of those things where when I heard that, I was like, I wonder why that is. So, but yeah, definitely interesting visit.
I do want to say it's got to start paying attention to these RAS maybe when it comes to centers that could potentially play for Arthur Smith. When they drafted Drew Dahlman in Atlanta, it was in like pretty much like, we don't know if this guy can play center anywhere else, but he's such a good athlete for this team specifically. Maybe it makes sense. So that is where he ended up landing. He's been their starting center. We'll see if that continues, because I'm not going to say he's necessarily been very good for Atlanta, but he has been their starting center.
He's very good in the run game.
There you go. Yeah,
I'll say
exactly.
that. He's very good in the run game.
Well, yeah, because he can get out in space, right? I mean, it's
he's
kind of like
crazy
similar concerns, I guess, with like Aaron Brewer. You know, he's very good in the run game. He's able to get out in space and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know if they take Mason McCormick. I think the RAS is going to be something that we continue to look at for the offensive linemen that they take. And you know what? I shouldn't have even mentioned that because Derek, we could have just had a great segue with you mentioning Penix right into the quarterback conversation, which is the other thing that we wanted to bring up today. So
it's all good.
I didn't take it. Yeah, I just slammed it right into the rim and it came back and hit me in the face. But I do want to talk about quarterbacks on today's episode a little bit. And everybody that's watching or listening to this is like, really? We're going to talk about quarterbacks again? I thought we were done with this, but just bear with us for a second here for 10 minutes or so. 3 quarterbacks currently on the roster, guys, as we all know: Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Kyle Allen. After 2024, as of right now, they will have 0 quarterbacks on the roster. So I think that's why it's interesting to bring up. Does the inclusion of Kyle Allen, or, you know, really the shape of the quarterback room right now, preclude them from drafting a quarterback if they really like one in the 2024 class? That's the big question that I want to bring up.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really a lot of reason to go sign Kyle Allen if they intended to draft a quarterback. And they certainly have enough needs in the draft compared to the number of high picks they have that they don't need to go use one on a quarterback. So I will say it certainly looks like they are going to go into the season with those 3 players as their 3 quarterbacks. I'm sure they'll find some undrafted guy to be the 4th arm for camp or sign somebody out of the UFL or whatever. But I think a better question is like, is that a good idea? You know, like, what's Kyle Allen bringing to the table when you already have Russell Wilson and Justin Fields that maybe you wouldn't have been able to get out of somebody with a day 3 pick that might have more upside? And I think really they kind of put themselves in danger of getting into the same situation they were in last year, where you, for whatever reason, we'll say Russ gets hurt early, Justin Fields goes out there and is struggling, right? And you need to save your season, and you turn to your 3rd quarterback, and it's Kyle Allen. So, like, even if he does well, it's the same paradigm as Mason Rudolph last year. Like, it would be a really good situation for them to have a guy with some upside in that room who might be signed beyond this year. It's just kind of crazy to me that it sure looks like they're going to go into the year with 3 guys on 1-year deals. And I think there are some players in the second half of this draft that can provide some value at the position. Derek, you just ranked the quarterbacks over at SteelersNow.com. Obviously, you know, the top guys are not really in the conversation here for the Steelers, but what's your thoughts about the depth of this class? Is there value for the Steelers picking a quarterback later, and should they be?
Yeah, I mean, the class overall, pretty strong class, especially if you need a quarterback. I mean, I think obviously the couple franchise guys at the top, several starting caliber players with some upside. You know, I think, you know, speaking of like Penix would be a guy that I would, even with the Steelers quarterback situation, that I would have interest in on day 2 if he fell to the right spot. The problem is, like, now, I mean, quarterbacks get overdrafted all the time. I mean, there's some smoke right now saying that like Vegas might take Penix in the 1st round. I mean, that would blow my mind, but like, it's Vegas and they've been known to kind of do some crazy things on draft weekend. So, but I mean, it wouldn't. The thing that I keep coming back to is nobody signed for next year, and that's the thing, is everybody's contract is expiring. Everybody's on 1-year deals. I would be really surprised if Russ signed an extension before the season. I would be really surprised if Fields did. I don't really think it makes sense for either party, Steelers, to go into this thing and like try to sign an extension before the season. I think the Steelers should just let this thing play out how it plays. Like, let's see how preseason goes. Let's see how the regular season goes. And worst comes to worst, like, you just re-up one of the guys that you've got on the roster right now for next season, or you move on next year, be aggressive and take your quarterback. I think really I would probably prefer to just try to fill the rest of the roster out this year, try to spend the draft capital on more important positions, and then see what you've got in Russ, see what you got in Fields, and then, you know, next year be aggressive to try to go get a quarterback. And hopefully, you know, you can get substantial leaps from last year's rookie class with Broderick, Joey, Keanu, those guys, and then you hit some singles, hit some doubles in this year's class as well, and I think you'll set yourself up better for the future. But guys that I'd be interested in, if like on day 2, like Penix is kind of intriguing, but he's going to go higher than like I personally have him graded on my big board. Rattler was the guy that I kind of sneakily was hoping that they would have interest in, but man, like they didn't show any interest at all with him. But I think, some of the stuff that I saw on tape last year at South Carolina, that offense was horrific. He was playing behind an atrocious offensive line. And I actually think it actually helped his development. Like he showed some really improved pocket mechanics and really poised under pressure. The thing with him is I think his play style is kind of an interesting dilemma because he likes to play that kind of scrambler game outside the pocket where he plays outside of structure. But he's not a good athlete. Like he has a really good arm, I think, pretty talented arm, but he's not a good athlete. And I'm just not sure he's going to get away with that play style at the next level. But yeah, I would probably say just like the way the roster is constructed right now, I'd just pass.
I do want to say real quick, just because you mentioned the Raiders, I was curious. I'm looking at a spreadsheet here that my friend Drew put together for all teams. There's one quarterback that say they were the Steelers, right? And we always look for the boxes that they're checking along the way to try to read the tea leaves. There's one quarterback that the Raiders have done more homework on than anybody else, and it's not Michael Penix. It's a Bo Nix.
Interesting.
Checked every box for the Raiders so far.
I like Nix better than Penix, but not like a ton, and I don't like either of them in the middle of the first round. The thing that's weird to me about trying to mock those guys to like the Raiders and the Broncos is like if you look at those players, and especially if you're the Raiders, like who after you is taking a quarterback? Like if Penix doesn't get taken by the Raiders at 14, he's making it to like the middle of the second round. Like there's nobody else to take him. Like so like yeah, he could go at 14 or he could go at like 48. I don't like there's a huge like stretch of this draft where you're just like, oh, they're not going to take a quarterback, they're not going to take a quarterback, and then you get to the teams that will already have taken one, right? Like the Bears don't need to take another one, and so I don't know. It's a very difficult projection. I don't
would it seem like Seattle, who picks at 16, not necessarily take him right there, but trade back into the first because of the fifth-year option?
I mean, maybe it's possible.
I'm just trying to think of like Geno's getting up there and like a team that has a starter right now, like maybe a year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly possible. I'm just not sure. I mean, where's Seattle picking the second round? They don't have a second round pick, right? Or if they do, it's later.
Oh, that's right. The Leonard Williams trade from last year.
So I don't see them. I mean, that'd be a long way to trade up. I just don't know. I mean, like, I don't know where. I mean, I guess if New England trades out of 3 and doesn't get a quarterback in the first round, then they'll try to take one of those guys at 34. But I'm like, if I'm the Raiders and I have 13 and I have 44 coming back, like, where is he going to go between those spots? I just don't know. I would wait. I also don't think very much of his pro prospects, so maybe I'm the wrong arbiter there.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, like we mentioned, Denver and Vegas. I think those two teams, if they are, dead set on taking a quarterback, and they don't want to get involved in the top 5 to go take one of the, the big 4 guys, Williams, May, McCarthy, or Daniels. They don't want to get involved in the trade up. Maybe you trade down from 12 or 13 and try to get one of those guys at like 20. Like maybe that's a trade partner potentially for the Steelers. I'm not saying that they should. I'm just saying I don't know why this is becoming a thing. Like I've seen some mocks or some graphics thrown up on my Twitter timeline. Maybe I'm just getting some smoke thrown my way, but like of Rome Odunze falling out of the top 10, he would be like, I think Smitty, you and I like talked about this last week. There would only be like 1 or 2 guys that I would, if I'm in the Steelers position, that I would go up and get, especially for a trade like 20 to 12 or 20 to 13. But Odunze, like if he was there at that point, and Denver doesn't have a second round pick because of I think probably the Russ debacle, if I had to guess. But yeah, that just something that I kind of thought of. Maybe they want to trade down, and that could be a partner if the Steelers were looking to be really aggressive, or if they really liked one of these offensive linemen enough to where they'd get a little froggy.
There's no chance of Rome Odunze getting past the Bears at 9.
Yeah, like it doesn't even have to be a bet.
Just no chance.
He shouldn't.
It doesn't even have to be a bet. It doesn't even have to be a bet. The person on the other end of this doesn't even have to do anything, but I will literally do whatever The other person once if he falls out of the top 10.
Everyone watching this, make sure you bookmark this pod, save it, screen cap it, all that stuff.
Put it in now what you want Smitty to do if Rome Odunze falls out of the top 10.
Make sure
the
you
thing
drop your
about
comments.
Denver, like when I'm looking at the mock and I'm looking at Denver, I agree that like it's actually 3 teams in a row there, Denver, Vegas, and New Orleans, where it's all like, hey, trade back could certainly look good here. I just wonder who might be on the board that would get a team to move up. Like Brock Bowers is a guy that could fall that I could see maybe somebody moving up for. But in general, I kind of look at the board and it's like the top guys are going to be at tackle and corner, which are really deep groups that I think people are not going to want to trade up. Like, I don't think people are going to have a strong enough preference between, Fuaga and Fautanu or between, Quinyon Mitchell and Terrion Arnold that they're going to want to pay a premium to get ahead of people to make that pick. I think teams are feeling good about the way the board is going to fall. Like maybe an edge falls that like Dallas Turner falls out of the top 10. Maybe that's a guy somebody would trade up for. I just think it's going to be tough sledding if you're one of those like teams in that 11, 12, 13, 14 round. If you're looking to move back, I don't know who people are coming up for.
I'd say probably Bowers, right? I mean, he has the most.
He's the one guy that I think, but also like, does he get past the Jets? I mean, I don't know.
Visiting with them today.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a dumb move, but the Jets make a lot of those, so I know.
Very fair.
I can very, very easily see that happening.
Yeah. Anything else on the quarterbacks?
Derrick, if you were going to take a quarterback on day 3, if you're the Steelers, you mentioned Rattler. Is there anybody else down there that interests you? Or maybe that has some skills that you think could be transferable that for whatever reason is down there?
Man, Rattler to me is the most intriguing. I don't personally think he gets to day 3, but he would be the guy like late day 2 if he was there that I would personally kind of be most intrigued by. I know a lot of people, there's a lot of fans of like Joe Milton because of the arm strength.
Eddie's watching this right now.
Eddie Provident. I'm just not. I actually think that he's going to go like the Logan Thomas route where he's going to be a tight end. Like, I just think that he's got like that type of athleticism, that type of build. I think there's more of an upside for him with the position switch. I actually know that there's a lot of people that really like Jordan Travis as well from Florida State.
No one said the name.
I don't know. Travis is like, I think he does some things really well, but I just cannot get by the just erratic accuracy. Like it bothers me a lot for someone that doesn't have like overwhelming tools or anything like that. The other name would be like Michael Pratt from Tulane. I think he's like a decent player. He's probably going to be like a really high caliber backup at the next level, but I think he's got some good tape. He was one of the only other prospects.
His 22 was better than 23 in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, he throws with touch. I like how he attacks the middle of the field. There was some definitely some stuff that I liked on his game. I watched him over the summer. He didn't really necessarily take the leap that I was kind of hoping for, but I do think he's going to be like a high caliber like backup at the next level.
That would be the one for me. That's why I was waiting for you to just say his name. I just think he throws with the anticipation, can throw to all levels of the field. Like if you had to take a guy, I just feel like he's the one probably in Arthur Smith's offense that could just get it out quick to guys.
This is a very interesting weird lack of depth at the end of this draft in general. It's not just the quarterback position, but like when you get into the 6th round, I don't like anybody anywhere basically.
Less and less underclassmen.
Like if you keep asking me like, oh, who do you like? I'm like, there's just a lot of bad out there. I think quarterback might be the one position where like that divide is the most stark. It's like most draft classes, there are guys that are going to go in the 6th or 7th round. You're like, oh, they have some interesting traits, or maybe this guy might even go undrafted. But I would like to like the Steelers are going to sign an undrafted free agent, and people are going to be like, is this guy good? I'm like, no, he's not. Like, I'm sure of it. There's nobody in there that is even like Austin Reed from Western Kentucky is like a low level guy who worked his way up. Maybe like I don't know. There's just
Keaton Slovis, baby.
There's nobody I even want to get a look at in terms of these later guys in this draft.
Hey, you see that Keaton Slovis 40 in that RAS?
I
He
did.
to be running the football. Don't even have him pass. Just take the ball and run. All right. Good stuff. Anything else before we get out of here?
I think I'm good.
Okay. All right, Derrick. Tell the people where they'd find you, find your stuff, all that good stuff.
At Steelers_DB on Twitter, sorry, Smitty, and YouTube, and then all of my written work. You can find all my positional rankings and all that good stuff on SteelersNow.com.
There we go.
Hey, Saunders _PGH on Twitter, Instagram, and wherever. I think I'm on TikTok, but I don't actually post there.
You still on?
We gotta
still on
get-
Threads? Is that still a thing?
What's
We gotta
that?
get Alan TikTok.
I have it. I made one TikTok, and it was good. I just don't. It's not.
Smitty can show you the ropes on TikTok.
I have a teenage daughter. I know the ropes. It's just not my. Not where I want to be on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's it could be a strange place. It is what you make it because you create the algorithm, but it can be an interesting place.
I believe now I am like, like required by law to finish this with, "What's up, brother?"
No. Actually, I'm gonna see. I might have to cut that out, to be honest with you, before I post this everywhere. No, I'll leave it in there. I am Zachary Smith, PGH. You can find me everywhere, including TikTok, if for some reason you would like to follow me on there and see some videos that I've posted in the past, brushing my teeth to random music and all these different types of trends that I created on there. X, Instagram, everywhere. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell here. Hit us in the comments with questions for another episode, all that good stuff, thoughts on what we talked about. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. For Alan Saunders, for Derrick Bell, myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.